Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, our Sunday show this week in sports. Today being joined by Robert Butler from SportsScope and Jim Jeffcoat, two-time Super Bowl champion and Dallas Cowboy football legend. We're streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch on Mac Sports and the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages. Please like, follow, and share our Facebook pages. Subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great NESSP shows. Our website is nessp.info. Check out, it's a great site for info on all shows, guests, bios, information on sports, stores, and links to those stores. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, together bringing you national sports with special focus on the Northeast professional sports teams from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning, Mac.
So, Jack, we had a really exciting, loaded week in sports this week, and a lot of different sports updates. Good morning to Tom. Glad to see you, Tom. There's a great show over there, a Philly show. And if you can comment, Tom, tell me the name of the network you're on the show. I'll plug that for you in the comments. Just let me know. I forget it. I know something to do with Fanatics or something. Just go ahead and give me a quick comment on there. We'll pop you on. But Jack, on our show today, as I said, we have Robert Butler, two-time Super Bowl legend, Dallas Cowboy legend Jim Jeffcoat, and we'll be covering a lot of different information, including breaking down the New York Giants football season and predictions of where they'll end up. But first, let's hit the MLB standings for a quick update of the leaders. The Red Sox and Rays are tied for first place atop the AL East, both at 60 and 39. Chicago White Sox are in first in the Central at 58 and 40. Houston at 60 and 39 lead the West. And the NL East, the Mets are at 51 and 44, still in first place. Milwaukee at 58 and 41 leads the Central. And those San Francisco Giants are still 2 games ahead of the Dodgers at 61 and 37, Jack.
Mets had a game you kind of want to forget. Taijuan Walker, even though he made the All-Star team, he's been a bit inconsistent at times. He's been a very pleasant surprise on the year. Don't get me wrong. But lately, he's been a little bit iffy. Yankees, a gutsy victory yesterday. They were down 3-0. And again, I hate these percentages that show the odds of a team winning. Because in the 8th inning, the odds had went up to 95% on the Red Sox winning the game. And the Yankees came back 4 hits in a row, 4 runs to win 4-3. Of course, Chapman comes in for the 9th inning, nearly hits the first batter. Runners on second and third, 2 outs. But, he ends the game on a strikeout. But it never seems to be a clean inning with Chapman. And, hey, one of the obscure games, Baltimore over the Washington Nationals. The Dark Knight, Matt Harvey. 6 innings, a 1-hit ball before they took him out. 2 games in a row, 6 innings, shutting the opponents out. 12 scoreless innings in a row. And his control is good. The velocity, for a guy who was all washed up, who was on his way out of baseball a couple of starts ago. What the heck is going on? He's been outstanding these last 2 games.
Yeah, it looks like he got his mojo back, Jack. So that's the update of the standings. The MLB did have its draft. They tried to do a little, promo of the first round selection. They just can't compete with the NFL and the NBA. The NFL has made the draft a made to watch, must view show. The NFL and NBA both have players that are coming, that may make a significant contribution to their teams, where the MLB and the NHL, their players could get lost in the minors for years, Jack.
Well, I think why the NFL draft is much bigger than the other ones is because college football is much bigger than college baseball, much bigger than college hockey. College basketball is pretty big, but that's why it's second right behind the NFL for draft interest. Okay, so I think it's related to basically the minor league college systems beforehand, why it's like such a big thing in the NFL.
That's true, but I also think, like I said, another big part of it is, if you draft this guy the first round, you may not see him in the majors for 3 years, so you kind of lose track of the guy. And then you say when he comes up, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, he got drafted by blah blah blah. There aren't too many draftees, Jack, that come out after 1 year in the minors, so it's kind of lose the name and lose the promotion of it. And you're right, college football is huge, college basketball is huge, and these players' names are pretty well known as opposed to hockey and
you make a great point, Mac, that people don't think about. You take the baseball draft. They draft the player in the first round, the team. By the time next year's draft comes around, that player they drafted the year before is probably still in the minors, working himself up the minor league chain. But the bottom line, he hasn't quite made it to the big club yet. So we tend to forget about the guy who was drafted the year before. That's why it's not as big as you say, because they don't have the immediate impact.
Well, let's look at that for a second, Jack. I wasn't going to go there, but let's look at this for a second. Now, there's a few reasons why they're not brought up right away. First of all, the contract is so minimum. I heard about a special where some of the minor leaguers were actually, I forget, was it San Diego? I think it was San Diego. They were actually sharing apartments, sleeping on the floor. One guy was sleeping in his car.
The Angel minor leaguers.
Thank you, Jack. So what they have to put up with has a lot to do with the Major League Baseball Association itself. If you think about it, the most powerful union in sports is MLB, and they represent the MLB. The minor leagues are kind of afterthought to them, right? So they pay them as least as they can. And I got a quick mention on that too, because I know something personally that has happened. They pay them as least as they can. It doesn't drain on their cap. And the veteran players that are up there that are making millions of dollars, they want to keep hold of their positions. So even if this minor leaguer has enough talent to maybe come up right away, he's kept down, Jack. And he may be brought up on a minimum salary and then sent back down again. That happens a lot, as you know. So it's kind of a game of a game, really. It's a game within the game where they want to keep them down. So no matter how good they are, even if they're capable of playing Major League Baseball. So I know personally a mom that had her son contacted by the San Diego Padres. Now they're in college. He's a sophomore in college. They offered him, I think it was $100, Jack. Now this player is pretty good. He's a good player, but the offer from the Padres was $100. The player before him, I think, was maybe $1,000 or something.
$100 for what? To go out to dinner that night or what?
To sign with them.
$100. That is insulting. They're better off offering them nothing. It sounds better if they offered nothing as opposed to $100.
I agree. So, of course, they turned it down. He looked at his mom, and his mom said, get out of here. We're not going to – why stop playing college ball, especially as a sophomore, when the offers, if you're that good, will continue to come. But for a club to actually call somebody and offer them that's crazy, right? I think. I don't know. But anyway, so the Major League Baseball draft, they kind of tried to juice up the first round. It really didn't work that well. NHL expansion draft, right? The Kraken picks up some good players, Jack. They said they were going to do it differently than they did with the Knights, right? That they were going to keep it so that they couldn't go right to the Stanley Cup or compete for the Stanley Cup. But listen, they get goalie Chris Drager, however it's pronounced. They get defenseman Jamie Oleksak, a very good defenseman, and they get Mark Giordano, an experienced, very good leader, still playing really good at his level. They made some really good picks in their expansion draft. A good core, Jack.
Well, from everything I gathered looking at the roster, and I look forward to Carter talking about this, our hockey guy, when he comes on. They did a mixture, young players and veterans. I mean, they kind of like diversified in what they were going to do, and they'll be competitive this year. They're not going to be a doormat. And expansion teams always given a pass in the beginning because Seattle is going to be so happy to have a team. The pressure's not going to be on them to win. Just stay in games, be a gritty hockey team, be entertaining, and it's going to be a success. You know, what happens with all young teams, either expansion teams or teams rebuilding, all of a sudden they have a great year. And that changes the expectations. It sets the bar very high. And now the expectations might become a little unreasonable because you expect them to repeat. Looking at the case in baseball, for example, of the Miami Marlins. They made the playoffs last year unexpectedly. They took a quick jump up a little quicker than we thought. Now this year, they're back down. They're not in playoff contention. So people are looking at it as a very disappointing season for the Marlins. But if they didn't make the playoffs last year and they just improved by a few games, then people wouldn't be as disappointed this year. But the idea that they raised the bar extra high last year, getting into the playoffs and winning a playoff series, and they beat the Cubs. Marlin fans want more of the same, but it's very difficult. So with Seattle, just go out there and play. If they make the playoffs in their first year and then they don't make it in their second year, people are going to be disappointed. They're going to be rumblings, even though it's an expansion team. You know, it's all where they set the bar. Sometimes it's a little better, strange as this seems, Mac, not to win so fast if you're a new team. Do it in increments. Climb up little by little by little, then everyone's happy with the long, slow climb. But if you get to the top of the mountain immediately, anything less than staying there, you know, won't make people happy.
It's a good point, Jack. I mean, it happened in the NFL when the last time when the Panthers and the Jags came in. The Jags were successful right away under Tom Coughlin. I think they went to the championship within the first couple of years, where the Panthers was more of
the AFC title game.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, so anyway, I guess you're right on that. The NHL draft, 3 of the top 5 picks, Jack, came from Michigan. You had number 5, Kent Johnson, number 2, Matthew, I think it's Beniers, and number 1, Owen Power, 2 centers and a defenseman, Jack. They must have some good college hockey teams up there in Michigan.
You know, you kind of wonder, you got me thinking about college hockey now, and you think of the popularity of college sports, and there we go back to the draft again. College football is massively big.
Sure.
College basketball is massively big, especially March Madness. I mean, there's no tournament like it. It's part of American culture, as I've mentioned in the past. Then you get college baseball that's kind of gaining more in popularity. You know, it's taking little steps, but it's gaining more in popularity. And I could see college baseball being really, really big in a few years. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I could see it being that. Something about college hockey, it just hasn't taken off to the average sports fan. It's popular maybe within a small segment within the hockey fraternity, but people don't just talk about, you know, college hockey. They just don't.
Yeah, I guess it has a lot to do where you're from too, Jack, right? In Connecticut, we don't have any professional sports. So college hockey is really covered pretty well up here. I would imagine out in some northern states that they have no professional sports, they may cover the college scene a little bit bigger. But in New York, I mean, you got what? You got 6, 7 professional teams, 2 of them being maybe 8 professional teams, 2 of them being the Rangers and the Islanders. I don't think they're going to look a lot at the college hockey there in New York.
I got to tell you a funny story, and I'm not going to name the college because I don't want anyone hearing it and getting on me about it. It happened about 30 years ago, Mac. A buddy of mine was head coach of a college hockey team. So I went to one of the games, and I went there with a very good feeling. I'm sitting by the ice thinking, this is what sports is all about. This is so refreshing. And to hear the players cursing at the refs, you bleepity bleep bleep, my mouth is open. like that. Like, I'm shocked. This is supposed to be college athletics, sportsmanship, everything good about sports. And I talked to my friend the next day about it. He was like kind of cracking up, laughing over the shock that I had, because I was kind of like a purist college. You conduct yourself in a certain way. They don't allow this to go on. But it was like NHL stuff, the way, they're cursing, going at it with one another, calling the refs each name in the book, and the refs are letting it go. Okay, too. Sometimes you wonder about refs, how much they should let go. Umpires in baseball don't put up with much, Mac. They toss you pretty quickly. It seems that way to me.
Well, I agree, Jack. I agree they do. And a lot of people complain about the umpires wanting too much of the spotlight in Major League Baseball, where they'll throw you out for anything, and they'll start arguments with players and coaches. A lot of people don't like that.
You have to have patience, Mac, if you're an umpire, an official. Sometimes you let things go. Listen, I saw a good action by an umpire about a week ago. The Yankees playing the Red Sox. I think there's a call on a check swing with Rafael Devers where he really didn't go around, and the third base umpire said he did. Devers glared at him. When the inning was over, Devers went out to third base where the umpire was covering the line. Between innings, okay, the umpire moved towards another section, towards the outfield, kept away from Devers because the umpire was smart enough. He didn't want it to escalate. He didn't want Devers to say something to him. He didn't want to get ticked off at Devers. He didn't want to get into it. He wanted to give Devers his space to cool off. And then when the inning began and play actually began and Devers had to concentrate on the game and the umpire he moved back into his position. That's good umpiring. Some umpires, they look for fight. You say one thing, it's one of those, who you looking at?
Yeah.
They're ready to kind of get at it, and they have a very short fuse.
I agree. In fact, like I said, a lot of the fans get upset with them. It seems like they want the spotlight as much as the players. In the Olympics, Jack, today China has 5 golds, Japan with 3, the United States and South Korea with 2. A couple, at least one goal last night that I caught in the swimming match. The men's volleyball and the women's water polo both won, as was expected, I guess. Again, I'm not really following the Olympics that much anymore, but I will take a look every now and then and see.
Mac, I watched some of the Olympics. You will never guess what I watched the most of. Now, keep this in mind. I didn't watch it for the name athletes. I watched it as a purist for entertainment only. Entertainment only. And the thing that I watched, Mac, yesterday, try not to laugh at me, was badminton mixed doubles.
There you go.
And the skill level, the way they're hitting the badminton back, forth, my head's like bobbing. Man, that's like the skill on that. Did you ever play badminton?
Of course.
Were you good at it or what?
I was okay. I was all right. It's a recreational game, but my father was very competitive at everything he did. That's where I get my competitiveness from, I guess. My dad, anything you played with my dad, he'd make you work. We played one-on-one volleyball, badminton, anything he played. It didn't matter. He had to win. So I guess maybe I get sort of my competitive edge from my dad.
Skateboarding too, Mac. I watched some of that.
Really?
Kudos to them. That's a sport.
Yes.
It's a sport. It's a new sport.
It's
not exactly for me. It's very athletic, very skillful.
Yes.
I mean, if we could have skiing as a sport, we could have skateboarding. It's different.
Yes.
I like skiing, by the way. No. I don't mean to get I shouldn't get the Winter Olympics in this. What I'm trying to say, it's extremely athletic. To get on a skateboard and to flip and to do the whole thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Young people like it, and it is. You can adopt it as a sport, and I can stomach that.
Well, I always say, Jack, not all competitions are sports, but every sport's a competition. And to me, for it to be a sport, you have to have that adversary coming at you while you're trying to perform an act or trying to prevent you from scoring. A competition is more you're competing against yourself, against others competing against themselves. And it's more a competition than a sport. I think there's a level of difference, right? Football, you're being challenged every play. Golf, well, besides the the water.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Hey, listen, great skill as a competition. I'm right with you. But unless somebody's trying to tackle the golfer while he's trying to make a putt, it's not a sport to me. That's all I'm saying.
let me tell you, I love downhill skiing. It takes a lot of nerve to go at that pace downhill. I mean, downhill skiing, when they're trying to beat one time of another competitor and you're watching the clock, it's really could be one of the most dramatic moments in sports, watching something like that.
You know what used to amaze me, Jack? The ski jump. Listen, when I eventually went in the military, I jumped out of planes and helicopters and stuff. But to me, to take off in midair and have your skis up so you continue to fly and then to land and try to go as far. I mean, I was a kid. I was memorized by that. I would watch that all the time. So, I mean, there are some incredible athletes.
And they land so softly.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean,
so softly they land.
I would have broke my neck. I mean, I don't know. That used to just memorize me as a kid. I just sit there and watch it and say, "Wow, the dude's actually flying." So that was pretty cool. Robert should be coming up in a minute, so let's kind of get started on what Robert will be going over with us. Of course, this week. The NFL makes a rule. They are not going to extend the season. They are not going to go out of their way to reschedule games. If this happens, if the players on one team get a COVID outbreak, and it's the reason for the game being canceled, the team with the players that have the COVID outbreak, the game will be forfeited, and they will be credited with a loss. And if you think about it, Jack, for some teams, it may not matter. But for some teams, it may really matter that are in the thick of it at the end of the year and they lose the chance of going to the playoffs because of that one outbreak that ended up canceling the game. Not only are there going to be fines, there's going to be pay taken away. Do you think the NFL has overstepped its bounds here?
The season ends. The season lasts a few months, Mac. Yeah, I just can't see having teams forfeit a game. A couple of players catch COVID and they have to forfeit games. I mean, the quarantine period's supposed to be anywhere 10 to 14 days. What happens if they catch COVID the day before the game? You're going to make them forfeit the next day's game, and technically they're supposed to be quarantined for the following weekend too. So I just don't see it. I don't see it working with all the money the NFL has, with all their resources, and for the amount of money they're playing players. Put them in the bubble for 4 months straight. Have them live together for 4 months if need be, during the regular season. And it might seem a little cruel. They're away from the families, this and that. But with the extra money, throw in a bonus, a retirement bonus for them doing it or something. And players are bound to catch it. Someone is bound to catch it. And you're going to make a team forfeit a game. And like you said, they might miss the playoffs because of the game they have to forfeit. It would be pretty outrageous. I just don't see it.
Jack, they got a 45-man roster. It's not like they only have an 11-man roster, right? So why are they not just taking the guys that are, that do have it positive, testing the players around them, seeing who's positive and who's not, and then just go for it? Why would you even forfeit the game or cancel a game? Remember last year, there were times where I think was it the Ravens? Was it the Ravens that had all those breakouts and they had to reschedule all those games, the Steelers and I think it was. I could be wrong, folks. I might be wrong on this, so don't hold me to this word. But there were other teams that got it, and they just quarantined them players and played anyway. I mean, didn't they have like a third-string quarterback, a former wide receiver, something like that?
Yes, but if someone catches it, rule of thumb is that everyone around them should quarantine if you were exposed. I just don't see it. If everyone's getting the vaccination, and if they do catch it, the people who've gotten the vaccination, they'll have symptoms, but the symptoms aren't going to be so severe. The danger is mainly towards those who haven't gotten vaccinated. So the NFL should just make it mandatory, be certain that everyone gets vaccinated, and and basically leave it at that. And then if someone catches COVID individually, they should be put on the sideline. But that's about as far as you could go. But to forfeit the games, I just don't. Like I said, I just don't see it.
First, Jack, I don't think legally you can force anybody to get any shot. Legally, I don't think you can do that.
But you cannot not allow him to play. The Vikings just let go of one of their coaches because he refused to get the vaccination, so they parted ways with him. And I'm fine with that because he made a choice. If he wanted his job bad enough, he would have gotten vaccinated. If the idea of a vaccination is so awful to him, you sometimes have to make sacrifices. These are the rules that the NFL has. Listen, if I was an NFL quality player, and the rule of the NFL was you have to take steroids because it improves your performance, I probably would make a choice not to play because I wouldn't want to put steroids in myself, but I'll have that choice. And the NFL it's a private league for the most part. Do you want the job? Don't want the job?
It is a private league to a point, Jack. It is also a monopoly, which they're letting the government right now is letting them use that as a monopoly and you're not letting certain things happen. So legally, like I said, you can't force him to take a shot. If you let him go, he does have legal action. He probably will win. So, I mean, it's an interesting.
No, he would probably lose in the courts. If he took the NFL to court, the NFL would not force. The courts wouldn't force someone not vaccinated onto someone else. It wouldn't happen.
And they also are denying him. They are denying his civil rights to work when he worked there, and they're releasing him because of something. I'm just telling you, Jack, that legally, I don't know if they can do that, and that's why they're not doing it. Otherwise,
the NFL.
Let me finish, Jack. If it was legally true that they could do that, then the NFL would say you all have to get shots or you can't play. They're not saying that. They're saying we want you. We are saying if you don't play because these players don't get shots, you're going to take a forfeit. They are not saying to the players, if you don't get a shot, you're out of the league. They are not saying that. And because legally they can't, believe me. Next up on backstage is Robert Butler, folks. We're going to go ahead and bring him up here. This is one of the things we'll be discussing with Robert amongst many other issues. He's here every Sunday. He's host of Sports Scope. Let's bring him up. Robert Butler.
Hey, guys. Morning.
How you doing, Robert?
So I'm all right.
Me and Jack just kind of we set the stage for you for the first one. The NFL came out and said, "Listen, we're not rescheduling any games because of COVID outbreak. We're not gonna extend the season. It's on you guys. If your players on that team break out in COVID that causes you to not play that game, and remember we have 45-man rosters, but if you cannot play the game, you say you can't play it because of COVID, you're going to forfeit it, and you're going to lose that game, and you might be fined too on top of that. What do you think about that, Rob?
You know what? I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm thinking the number's like 75%. I've read anywhere from 75 to 80% of the players are vaccinated. The United States, 49% of the population's vaccinated. That doesn't count the matter of people who's gotten COVID, gotten over it, and do not want to get vaccinated. So I understand that, but I don't know if you guys talked about this. The coaches are being mandated.
Right.
To take it. Rick Denham's, what's his name? Dennison from Minnesota was essentially fired 27 years. It sounds like something that could become a lawsuit. We don't know long-term side effects of this, so I don't believe in mandating either. It's a lot to unfold.
Yeah, I mean the ramifications and the issues about this are far-reaching. You know, if you get the vaccine, they cannot ask you to show the card. That's illegal. It's a privacy issue. You have the right to privacy. So suppose you tell them, yeah, I got the shot. Well, let me see your card. I don't have to show you that. There's so many different things, because this is new too. There's so many different unanswered legal questions. But again, we're not in Nazi Germany where you have to show that, what your identification is. That doesn't work here in the United States. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. And I agree with Jack. That's a little tough, man. I mean, I agree that you probably should get a shot to help your team and not get it. I mean, I understand all that.
Yeah.
But I think the NFL goes a little too far here, saying, hey, you're going to forfeit the game, lose your pay, and you're not going to, you might get fined on this. I think the Players Union will do something about that if it does happen.
Well, DeAndre Hopkins is putting out on Twitter and his Instagram that he's got a family member that got the shot, and now they're having heart problems. That's the issue that the players who have not been vaccinated have, and that is a legitimate issue.
They might be having heart problems anyway. Why is the vaccine being blamed on that?
According to DeAndre Hopkins, yes. I mean, the guy was in the military. He had 0 heart problems. I forgot what the medical term is for it that causes this. It's been talked about in COVID, particularly in the vaccine as of late. So, I mean, there's 1,700 players. I couldn't see mandating 1,750 players. We don't know the long-term side effects, guys. We do not know the long, because it has been tested. It's COVID-19. It's not COVID-09.
Yeah.
So that would be a major lawsuit. Remember CTE? It's what I talked about. Remember that lawsuit? Yeah. And that's what the NFL is scared of. And they still may get sued for making these coaches take this vaccine. And, guys like Gary Kubiak's son's 34 years old. He's taking the vaccine. What if he's sterile and then he sues the NFL? We won't know that until maybe 10, 12 years from now. So I think some backlash may happen from that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings might get sued for denying the right to work because of, breaking his civil rights, making him do something that's very private. I mean, it's a choice. And, again, we're not in the type of country that can come in and say, you have to take a shot. You have to wear a mask. We're not in that type of country. And it'll be interesting. I think this is going to be very interesting. And the long-term effects, you are right, we don't know. But I'm more interested in the NFL saying, hey, I don't care, Kansas City Chiefs. If you're, you're 12 and 4, you forfeit your last game, and the Kansas City Chiefs, for some reason, don't make the playoffs because of that. I think that might become a bigger issue this year than anybody can imagine. I mean, that's just crazy. But anyway. So, Robert, on our show Friday, even though there wasn't really followed, it was broke. Let me give you who broke it. Me and Keith kind of talk about it. Maybe broke it on media, talk media. But the Houston Chronicle ran a story that I read late into the night after I got off work about the Oklahoma Sooners and the Texas Aggies, I think it is. Was it the Aggies or Longhorns? Or the Longhorns?
Longhorns. Aggies are A&M, I think.
Right. Yeah. They ended up saying there was a news broke that they were going to join the SEC.
Yes.
And I didn't believe it. It's like, is this true? So I looked for corroboration, and there was corroboration with it. And I'm thinking, I don't know why nobody's talking about this. So on Friday, I got Keith on, who covers the NCAA constantly. And I talked to him about it. I said, listen, you're talking about maybe the biggest change in college football history, the biggest super conference ever, 2 divisions within this conference, the SEC. And if that does happen, which they say it's gonna, and the NCAA and the SEC had no comments on it, you're talking about the ramifications of this, Robert, are endless, right? You got the biggest conference in the nation, and then you got these other conferences that were kind of big. Now they're going to scramble to get teams in. You might see Clemson say, hey, I'm out of here. I'm going to go join the SEC. You may see USC say the same thing, because region means nothing in this right now.
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that maybe this is a power move to maybe make the NCAA insignificant, and maybe they form their own oversight committee? Do you think that maybe the change to the rules where one player would transfer from, say Alabama to Texas, now they just transfer in the same division. They keep all the great players, they get all the money, and the NCAA, what are they going to do?
Well, the Big Ten made more money than the SEC in 2019. 20 don't count. I'm okay with it. There's been talk for years, guys, about super conferences. You hear this from guys like Bruce Feldman and whatnot. This was years ago, and that this may happen. Now we're having talk of a 12-team playoff. But for you guys, for me, this is a TV product. Yeah. Wouldn't you like to see Oklahoma and Alabama play in the regular season? Wouldn't you like to see A&M and Texas play back in the regular season? It's like interleague play in Major League Baseball. I'm ecstatic about it. I mean, I understand the Big 12. They got a gut shot. They're talking about maybe bringing in Boise State and
they're gone. They're gone.
Cincinnati.
They're gone. They're not even relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking, Robert, in this is that the NCAA, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, has rules about buying somebody a sandwich. But here's leagues, and this is not the first. Basketball's done it too. Yeah. Here's have teams leaving conferences and going to conferences that don't make sense. Why didn't they do anything? Why aren't they trying to stop this? Saying, listen, you're going to destroy the whole college football or basketball sport itself nationwide for your little part of the world here. Why didn't the NCAA, who's supposed to be the governing body for this, get up in arms about this?
Well, they technically don't have a commissioner. Colin Cowherd talks about it all the time that maybe the NCAA needs a commissioner over all the major conferences. I disagree with that. Now, they're going to be able to buy – you can buy out your contract. In 2025, that contract with Texas A&M or Texas and Oklahoma will end. But the schools are expected to buy it out possibly next week.
Yeah.
So we could see this next year for Oklahoma and Texas be added into the SEC.
Yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised, again, if Clemson and a couple other big schools join it too, because how are they going to compete with the funds that the SEC is going to make? It's really a huge story, and I didn't know why nobody was covering it. The MLB, they're trying a new thing down in minor leagues, and I love the MLB when they try to do things and they want to test it there first and bring it up to Major League Baseball. So they did that double header, 7th inning, man on second. I mean, a lot of people like it, a lot of people don't like it. Well, now they have what's really interesting is they're playing around with technology. They have a catcher who has a transmitter on his wrist, on the wrist.
Yeah,
and the pitcher has a transmitter on the wrist, and they're going to call pitches. They have 9 different buttons they can pick from, and they're going to call pitchers from the wristband to the pitcher. I guess to try to alleviate cheating. Man, can I see all kinds of problems with this, Robert. All kinds of problems.
Well, supposedly that's what Houston was doing, and it was called for cheating from what I've read. The idea is to speed up the game, and it's to prevent sign stealing, which anything that's to speed up the game, you guys know I'm totally for. Of course, they're going to try everything out. The minor leagues, the guinea pig. Everything's going – any kind of crazy idea, let's try it out in the minor leagues. They don't mean nothing. They're doing the pitch clock. They're even talking about eliminating defensive shifts in the minor leagues to be tried out, guys. So I'm all for that. Speed the game up, make things more have more of a sense of urgency. That helps the offense. The pitchers will adapt. I don't see anything wrong with it, not unless you have battery problems when you transmit.
I can see it now. The transmitter's not working. Hold on. Take a time out.
In the backup transmitter.
Somebody's hacking in. Somebody's hacking into our transmitter.
They're supposed to be hack proof.
Yeah. So is everything. I can imagine that They know the pitches. They were up there in the state. They have one of those things up there in the press box. They're hacking in. The pitcher can't see the screen. I can see this slowing down the game. What is wrong with 1, 2, 3? The catcher doing that. Who cares if they try to steal it? I mean, sometimes, Robert, some things are just better left. I mean, even if you look at replay right now, they want to speed up the game. Replay has slowed down the game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to admit it. So now we're going to have little transmitter buttons on our wrists, and they're going to put that sticky spider thing underneath that wristband, so they can, they'll be doing this, and then they'll be grabbing it. I mean, I can see this slowing down, making it another 5-10 minutes you could add to the game.
Well, I mean, that's just, the league will have to adapt to it. I mean, there's always somebody who's looking for an edge, man.
I don't know.
You guys don't want any change, do you?
You
probably don't even like interleague change or interleague play, do you?
I'm all for changing if it speeds up the game, as you say, but it doesn't affect the outcome, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, the 7 innings to me affects the outcome of the game. You got some teams that have terrible relievers. So you're saying to the team that has good bats, this reliever comes in that we know is coming in, I got a chance to win the game. And you say, no, you don't. It only goes 7 innings. I don't like that.
Yeah, that's saying a lot. I don't know about shortening the actual innings.
That's what you're talking. Yes, Jeff.
This is good stuff. I enjoy it. But listen, let's get to the meat of things. What's the latest on Aaron Rodgers?
I was thinking after our conversation last week, if something happens to the Players Association president, Jack, I'm going to write you in. You love the players. I mean, you are a pro player on everything. Yeah, I read that too, guys, that he put the Last Dance thing on his Instagram with Jordan and Pippen, and so did Devontae Adams. The odds market, some of the odds markets are saying that he may retire this year. Well, that would be a temporary setback, Air quote retired means he's going to sit out, and he's got a better chance of sitting out than playing and then possibly getting traded in the offseason. That's the latest that I've heard, guys.
Well, if he sits out, can he move on the following year? Is he still on the contract to the Packers? If he sits out a full year, does that make him a free agent?
No, they own his rights. He just want to call their bluff. I mean, because you'll find out whether this quarterback that they have can play or not. And if you're Green Bay, you're like, we're sitting here with this asset. Do we want this asset to sit here for 3 years and not get any more draft picks? And it's already hard for us to get free agents to come to Green Bay, Wisconsin. I mean, that's crazy.
And when a player doesn't play for a year, even though Rodgers' value would still be high, it does go down a little bit. It's like a new car leaving the dealership.
I mean, you're from New York. I mean, the Jets signed Bell as soon as he set out that year. I mean, it's like he had a deal in place, Le'Veon Bell. Now, he wasn't that good, but that's a quarterback. I mean, that's a running back, guys.
That was a great move by the Jets to sign Le'Veon Bell. Listen, Jack is happy now. He can when he leaves the show, he had his Aaron Rodgers fix for the day, and he's all giddy right now. We were kind of boring him with real sports talk for a second there. Without Aaron Rodgers, I mean, his day's not complete yet.
Well, I love talking NFL though. You guys know 7 weeks. 7 weeks from today, guys.
Yes.
We'll
Pickles, I would send him to maybe Dancing with the Stars next. I'd let him go through a little show thing and let him go out, have a great time for the next 3 years and lose about $90 million.
Houston could have the number 1 pick overall. That's not a bad move, Pickles. There's not a no trade clause on his contract. Aaron Rodgers does not have a no trade. Now, Deshaun Watson has a no trade clause. But he's waiving it,
Yeah, he's waving it. That's what he's doing, Robert. That's what he's doing.
I'm just saying, he can pick and choose where he wants to go.
Deshaun Watson, it's a serious situation.
Yes.
We don't know what the NFL is going to do. The NFL is not going to step in an Aaron Rodgers situation,
No.
but they're going to have to make a decision on Deshaun Watson, and it's very uncomfortable for them. They can just let him play, no strings attached, or they could take action. They could put him on an exempt list, meaning he would get paid, but he'd be forced to be inactive while they investigate further, but he'd collect his money. It's a very uncomfortable situation for the NFL, but so much has been going on behind the scenes with the Deshaun Watson situation that we haven't heard about. Notice both sides have been very quiet, very, very quiet. And that in itself is revealing that there's a lot of activity going on.
I want to say, guys, that I've read that Watson, the odds markets are saying he won't play in this year as well. So,
I believe that. I believe Aaron Rodgers will come and play for the Green Bay Packers. He needs that money. I mean, he lives a certain lifestyle, and I believe he'll be back before the beginning of the season. If I was Green Bay, I'd sit him for the first couple of games. Let's talk about fantasy football, Robert.
Yeah.
You love playing this. So when do the leagues start for fantasy football, or have they already?
Well, typically when I was drafting back in my drafting days, we would do our draft on Labor Day weekend, like that Sunday per se. The reason why you want to do that is because of training camp injuries. Cam Akers tore his ACL the other day. Players get traded, those surprise trades, and you got a running back on one team, and then he gets traded to another team that may not have a good enough offensive line. You may want to dip that player down a little bit. So the key is to put that draft. I know people are so anxious to get started, but you got to have the discipline if you're a commissioner of a draft league and say, listen, we want this thing to go all the way up, possibly to that Monday, Labor Day,
Right.
to do that draft. And of course, daily fantasy is what I play, and what's really catching on more. You can play it all the way up to the last minute.
Definitely. So a little advice from you, right, before the season starts, or the fantasy football season starts. I've seen it both ways, Robert. Some people will pick the best quarterback in the league, say a Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And some will pick a good quarterback on a bad team, because it doesn't matter whether they win or lose. It's all about stats, right? So, for example,
Trevor Lawrence.
Matt Stafford was a big fantasy football quarterback for quite a few years, because he was always trying to catch up. He'd throw for 4,000 yards, so many touchdowns, because his team was always behind. Where if you have a good, solid quarterback on a winning team that doesn't have to throw as much, for example, a Ryan Tannehill, right? You got a good running game, got a good defense. He's not going to have the kind of stats that Matt Stafford has, whether he's winning or losing. So there's like three different that I've seen over the years, three different fantasy quarterback picks. You got the quarterback like a Tom Brady, who sometimes is going to throw for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards. You got a quarterback like Matt Stafford, who's talented, on a bad team, who's going to maybe outthrow him, even though they lose. And then you have the running quarterbacks, right? Like Jackson, Murray, possibly even Hurts for the Eagles. He may be a good fantasy quarterback because he may run for touchdowns as well as throw for touchdowns. What is your philosophy when you pick your first quarterback?
It depends on the rules of the game, guys. If you are the commissioner and your league says we want to make 6-point touchdown passing touchdowns for quarterbacks, then you want to get that guy to throw all those touchdowns. And you can find that out through the data. You study the opposition, you study the defenses that they're going to be playing against. Like, for instance, if you're playing Jacksonville twice, well, they're going to have a bad pass defense probably. They're going to have a bad run defense. So if your quarterback, say quarterback X is playing at Jacksonville once a year, and they're playing, say, at a Detroit or somebody like that, they're going to throw more. You throw more on the road, and you run more at home. So if you've got those 4-point passing touchdowns, you want to lean farther towards a Lamar Jackson because it's pretty standard. It is 10 yards per rushing point. So Lamar Jackson is a huge for most leagues. I'm pretty much most leagues that have those 4-point passing touchdowns. A lot of the Yahoo leagues got those. Guys like Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton back in the day, he's always getting those rushing touchdowns. Well, that's 6 points versus 2. That could be the difference in winning your game and not.
See, Jack, you had no idea, did you?
I'm not a fan.
I'm messing with
I'm
the
not
kid.
a
That's
fan
why y'all
of
call the kid.
football
Here, you know?
guy. I mean, I'll bet on games, but I'm like old-fashioned. I don't even like the point system. I just like odds. If I'm going to take an underdog and they're 4-1 underdog, I just like to go straight. I don't like to do the points, the fantasy things on individual players. But look, people enjoy it, so good for them.
And a little gambling note, guys. I've been into FanDuel here lately, reading over some of their odds, and they are not showing Cleveland Browns any love. The Cleveland Browns are very talented, excellent defensive pickups they've made. This is the Stefanski's second year. He won Coach of the Year last year with that running game and Beckham back. I think they're going to go a long way. And the odds guys are putting them way behind other teams in the AFC. So they're a good team to look at as far as like total wins. Getting to the Super Bowl perhaps is really good. It's like plus 800. Possibly have the best record in the AFC. They're way down there.
Well,
Cleveland Browns
love this year.
Cleveland Browns, a great pick. I mean, I'm not saying I'm picking them to go to the Super Bowl. I haven't figured out my final predictions yet, but they're definitely going to be in the mix. And had they not lost the way they did to Kansas City last year, when the ball went out of bounds into the end zone, when it looked like they were going to get a touchdown, they may have upset Kansas City. They came close, and Kansas City went to the Super Bowl last year. I mean, the Cleveland Browns seem to be peaking. I mean, either this is their year, this year they're going to really slide back, but they're primed to take a serious Super Bowl run. I agree with you, Rob.
Yeah, they play Kansas City week 1, guys. And if Frank Clark, who's got that weapons charge, we talk about the exemption, I've been reading, he may get on that exemption. He's their best defensive player. I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. Cleveland may beat them in week 1 and cause a big stir in the NFL. Keep an eye out for that game. That may be the biggest game in week 1, by the way.
Well, you know, Robert, you just gave some invaluable information to Jack. He will be calling, Luigi down the street, making his bet on the Cleveland Browns, because Jack does everything the old school way. He's not going to call.
You still use the payphone.
The big game of week 1 is going to be the Jets at Carolina with Sam Darnold quarterbacking the Panthers, Zach Wilson. That's a game of like big interest.
For you, it will be big interest. For everybody else, I don't know, Jack. Robert, thank you for coming in.
Sure.
We appreciate you coming in every week. We'll see you next Sunday. Have a great Sunday, and pretty soon we'll be going right out to the games after these
7 weeks. I can't wait, guys.
Me either. Thanks again, Robert. You can find him at Sports Scope with a K on almost every site there is. Check out his site. It's great. He does a great job. Again, Robert, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, guys. Have a good show.
You too. So there you go, folks. Robert Butler with his insight on the sports news. And right after this break, folks, we have our third compadre now on This Week in Sports. The legendary 2-time Super Bowl defensive end himself will be up with us, the amazing Jim Jeffcoat. Folks, we'll be right back after these messages. Stick with us.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Infoline. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. This is our Sunday This Week in Sports, which will grow into the big football show as the season comes closer. Right now, Jack, we have backstage our third co-host for the last hour, the legendary Dallas Cowboy defensive end himself, Jim Jeffcoat. Let's bring him up.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Jim. You're like psyched like you're starting a game, like running out of the tunnel now. You have that enthusiasm.
I got that enthusiasm today. After I heard about, Jets in Carolina the first week, I got pumped up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, that's the game of the week to me. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Hey, Jim, we're going to, of course, break down the Giants. That's our next team there in our NFC East, which we do represent the Northeast up here. But first, Jack is very excited about talking to you about this subject. Jack, being the great boxing writer he is, he loves to get into certain player personality discussions. Me, I love the game. I could talk to you hours about football without even mentioning anybody. But Jack does a great job at breaking down personalities, and that's why the show is so successful when we do it. So having you here, you've been there. You were under these coaches. You were there with Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones came out and said he made a mistake. And Jack wants to get into you a little bit about that because you were there. So go ahead, Jack, give it to him.
You were there. It's newsworthy. That's one of the things. When something is newsworthy, you want to talk about it. And Max says, well, there's time to talk about it another time. Who's going to care about this in a couple of weeks? I mean, he came out, Jerry Jones, and he talked about, Jimmy Johnson letting him go and all. And I have mixed feelings, in all honesty. I'm not the biggest Jimmy Johnson fan. Now, listen, he was a very good coach. He's a very good coach, so let me make that clear. He wasn't quite, to me, on the level of, let's say, a Bill Parcells, but who was? I mean, really, very few guys were. But he was a heck of a coach, and I understand players revered him on that team. And I remember when he left the Cowboys, Michael Irvin throwing a garbage can, being very upset, being with Coach Johnson since he was a young man in college and all. But I think it was like a two-headed sword as far as that went. Now, you were with the Cowboys the year after you guys won 2 Super Bowls in a row. You were there the year after, in which the Cowboys lost to the 49ers in the playoffs. And everyone's saying, well, if Coach Johnson were there, you would have won that game, and then you would have won the following year. I mean, we don't know whether it would have been 4 Super Bowls in a row. Maybe it would have been. Maybe there wouldn't have been any Super Bowl victory in the follow-up. We never know. But I do know this. Jimmy Johnson went to Miami. He spent 4 years there. And I know I'm getting on your guy. I get the feeling Jimmy Johnson is your guy. So if you could come back hard at me if you want, I won't take it personal. But the Dolphins did not improve the 4 years that Jimmy Johnson was there. They were okay. I think they made the playoffs 3 of the 4 years. But winning percentage-wise, they were a little better off with Don Shula. And the reason Jimmy Johnson replaced Don Shula was twofold. Jimmy Johnson was a legend at the University of Miami, where he was a very successful college coach, national championship and all. I understand that. And there's a certain fatigue that sets in when you make the playoffs every year, but don't get the ultimate prize, the Super Bowl ring. Eventually, there's a lot of blowback. There's a lot of fatigue, and that's what happened with Don Shula. And the pressure was on to replace him with Jimmy Johnson. But when Jimmy Johnson took over, they were 8-8 the first year. They won. They didn't take it to another level, not at all. And I think it was a two-headed monster because I think Jimmy Johnson wanted to live in the Miami area. He loved Florida. He wanted out of Dallas. And keep in mind when I'm just going to finish off this. When the Dolphins came to play Dallas, okay, I think they played him 3 times. With Jimmy coaching the Dolphins, and the Cowboys beat them those games. You were part of the game when they came back the year after. Jimmy Johnson, very good coach. Very, very good coach. I would hire him if I were an owner. Let me make that clear. But I think this is overplayed, and Jerry Jones is taking too much of a rap for this. He deserves some blame, and I think it should be 50-50, split up and all. I want to hear your take on it.
I'm glad you talked today, Jack. I'm glad you expressed what you felt about this. First of all, Jimmy Johnson walked into a perfect storm. We were at a crossroad at the Dallas Cowboys as far as winning. We had struggled in the previous years before he got there. But he brought enthusiasm, he brought energy, and he brought a plan. That's the first thing you can say about Jimmy. And the next thing is how he approached it. He always said, we're going to work like champions because someday we will be champions. And he believed it. And he made everybody around him. If you didn't believe it, I mean, he traded some really good players that won
yes, he did.
Other places. Everson Walls, Steve Diassi, guys like that helped the Giants. As far as Bill Parcells, you could say Parcells never won a Super Bowl without who? Bill Belichick, right? Am I correct? He never won a Super Bowl without him. But to Jimmy's point, he walked into it and he built that team. He built the Dallas Cowboys to be them successful. That is a great question that you asked, Jack. Would we have won 3 Super Bowls in a row if Jimmy was the coach in the 3rd year? I really do believe it, because Jimmy would have figured out a way to win. And that was his model. He did it at Miami. He did it even at Oklahoma State. The only place he didn't win is Picayune High School in Louisiana. That's the only time he lost. Other than that, he built teams. He built championship teams. He knew how to do it. He knew what he needed to do to make these teams successful. Yes, I am a big Jimmy Johnson fan, but I'm a big Tom Landry fan. Tom Landry was a genius. I mean, Tom Landry developed the flex defense. He developed the shotgun, things that, we still use today other than the flex, but he helped the game a lot. Jimmy was different. He wasn't a motivator. I mean, he wasn't an innovator. He was a motivator. And he brought people around him like that. They brought a lot of energy. And that's what I liked about him. I think what happened with Jimmy and Jerry, because I respect both of them, I think they want to win. But sometimes your egos get in between it. And that's what I think happened with the Eagles. Both of them are proud men. They were alpha males. And sometimes when you're an alpha male, you step on the other alpha male's toes, because you have to have things the way you want them. And Jerry, as the owner, had that right, but Jimmy is the head coach, and a successful head coach, because he did things in a short period of time that was unheard of at that time. He had the right to have things his way. And that's what that's how he looked at it. He wanted certain things done, and they weren't getting done, and that bothered him. So I think they messed up because they couldn't reach a happy ground. And I'll tell you why Jerry said that statement. It's because he's going to put him in the Cowboys Ring of Honor. He's going to be on the stadium. And that's why he said that. He is trying to bury the hatchet and say, when he says, because Jimmy's going, obviously, and he wants Jimmy to come to they have the honor for the Hall of Fame. And he knows that players are going to come. And Jimmy's going to get his ring at the Cowboys Stadium. And he wants him to be there. And he is going to be on that stadium. And he deserves to be on that stadium. And that's just my opinion on it. I admire both men for what they've done. But just like I said with Parcells and Belichick, the same thing can be said. Jimmy won it with Barry. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for Barry. But Jerry won it with Barry, the Super Bowl. But those were Jimmy's players. Jimmy brought the majority of those players to the Cowboys.
Well, let me make a couple comments on there. First of all, Parcells, even without Belichick, he turned the Jets around from a one-win team to a nine-win team with the same players, and then ended up taking the Jets to the championship. He took the Dallas Cowboys to the playoffs coming out of retirement. He took the Patriots to the Super Bowl. He brought his coaches with him, not just Belichick. He brought his offensive coaches. Right. So I mean, he did it by the way of he knew what it took the formula to win, and so did his coaches. So he just picked up his coaches and went somewhere else and built teams very quickly.
Yes.
Jimmy Johnson was benefited by that Herschel Walker trade. There's no doubt about it. I mean, without all those players he got from that trade, the Dallas Cowboys wouldn't have built that Super Bowl team so fast. That was a great move. That was a great move. Go ahead.
And that was a great move. But the reality of it is we don't know if he would have built it a different way. You're right. The Herschel Walker trade gave him. But who is the interesting thing is that you look at those picks, and there were some great picks in the Tony Tolbers, the Mark Samanowskis, the Darryl Johnston. But there were also some picks that weren't as successful, the Rondy Westons and guys like that. Some of the guys he got in that trade.
I agree with that. I agree with that, Jim. But I just think even if he did build a winner, it took a little bit longer. if he didn't get all those talented players. That's all I'm saying. They were his players. They were a lot of them were right out of college. He knew how to coach college football, and I think that helped Jimmy Johnson a lot. As far as Barry goes.
But you can use that in a lot of successful teams. If
It's
they
true.
don't get this type of players and be
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with that, Jim.
You have to have it's the Jimmys and Joes, right?
I agree. And, you know, the funny part about that story that Jack didn't bring up was that when Barry got there, he kept asking where Jimmy Johnson was. And Jerry Jones says, he said, you're here to replace Jimmy Johnson. Why do you keep asking where Jimmy Johnson is? He says, because I want to sit you two, he used the bleep word, you two jerks down and hash this up so you don't mess up something that's so great. So, I mean, that's the type of coaching. I mean, I was laughing when I read that. Here he is replacing Jimmy Johnson, and he wants to sit them two down and say, don't mess this thing up. What are you doing? So that's the kind of guy he was, which made me laugh.
Yeah, I played for Barry for 1 year after Jimmy left. I didn't, Jack, I played against Jimmy in Buffalo, and we beat him in the playoffs. But Barry was, the way to describe Barry is he's the grandfather that you always wanted. And that's the way he was. He would come after win or loss, he'd come and hug every player after the game and tell them he loved them. And you'd ask him the reason why he did that. And he said that might be the only time all day they hear that.
I don't think he hugged Troy Aikman, though. Troy Aikman wasn't the biggest. But I don't think Troy Aikman hugged him back because Troy Aikman's beef with Barry Switzer. You know more than I do on this, obviously.
They really don't know the true insides because you remember Troy.
Right.
If Barry didn't talk to Terry Donahue, Troy wouldn't have went to UCLA. Barry called Terry Donahue and told him he had a great player that didn't fit what he was doing. Because if you remember, Troy broke his leg and Jamel Holloway came in and they went back to the wishbone. And he said, hey, I got this great player. He doesn't fit our scheme. You need to take him.
Listen, but the knock on Barry Switzer was he wasn't that much of a disciplinarian. For example, Troy Aikman wanted, from all reports, you would know better than I would what the reality is, and you could correct me because you were there. But Michael Irvin would enjoy the nightlife, reportedly. He would come in the next day, maybe a little hungover for practice, and Troy Aikman reportedly didn't like it and wanted Barry Switzer to do something about it. And Barry Switzer reportedly one day he ran Michael Irvin a little more and then said, what the heck, I don't want it. But I remember Michael Irvin being interviewed, and they asked him how tough Barry Switzer was. They asked him, can Barry crack the whip? And I remember Michael Irvin cracking up laughing during the interview and saying, yeah, Barry can crack the whip. It's like he liked Barry, but it was more like Barry was a little bit also one of the guys, where Jimmy Johnson liked the guys a lot and they felt close to him, but he wasn't exactly one of the guys like Barry Switzer was, which I think is a good thing.
Here's the thing you got to understand about those two coaches, and I can tell you the truth about them. Jimmy had his guys, and in his guys, they did no wrong. I mean, when my wife would come to town for a training camp, he would say, hey, your wife's in town. Go stay with her, because he knew that's what I was going to do. Some players, he wouldn't let that happen. And he'd always tell you, he had leeway with the players that were his guys, because he knew it. And you got to remember, Michael went all the way back to the University of Miami with Jimmy. And I always asked Michael about that, and he said he didn't want to let Jimmy down because he knew that Jimmy had his back. Because if you remember, the issues happened after Jimmy left. And Barry was truly, he's a good man. He's a bootlegger's son. He grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. So he did get more leeway. He wasn't a disciplinarian like Jimmy. And Jimmy really, to certain players, he would look like a disciplinarian. But to his guys, shoot, it was pure heaven.
Yeah.
And that people don't realize.
And I think that's every coach Every great coach has their group of guys that are the leaders on the team that he looks out for. All the great coaches have that.
Yeah. You look at a great example is Bruce Arians, who just won the Super Bowl. To me, he is a lot similar to Jimmy, but he has Barry in him because the players have leeway to be themselves, and that's it. And they love playing for him. It looks like they enjoy playing for him. They enjoy being around him, and we enjoy being around Jimmy, and we enjoy being around Barry. He's in Bruce, and you could say the same thing about Andy Reid. Andy Reid is a mixture of both of them, and guys like that.
Even the Parcells, Lawrence Taylor, there's certain players that they gave a lot of leeway to that they did in other players. So guys, let's get to the Giants. I hope Jack got his fill of Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones, and I think he's just trying to prevent us from.
Well, we got to ask about Aaron Rodgers.
All Jack's worried about is the Jets in Carolina. That's all.
Right, and being a Jet fan, he doesn't want to talk about the Giants. I know that, but that's okay. We're going to do it anyway. So let's get to it, guys. Let's get to the Giants breakdown. A quick little synopsis. Free agents they picked up: wide receiver Kenny Galladay, All-Pro, an All-Pro from Detroit. Adoree Jackson, making the secondary maybe with the strongest unit on the Giants right now with them 4 defensive backs. Tight end Kyle Rudolph. A red zone threat, good hands, great blocker. They also picked up Raiders' Devontae Booker, depending on what happens with Saquon Barkley. That might be the biggest pickup of the year for him because we don't know how Saquon's going to react with that injury. And, of course, their draft, they picked up Kadarius, and they picked up a pretty good Kadarius Toney, and a real good he had an injury, maybe a steal, Aziz, I'm going to say, I hope I'm doing this right, Oharle, maybe the steal. He was injured, but he's one of the best pass rushers in the league. So that's going to boost their defensive edge rushing. So guys, we end up starting, and of course we know a lot of this is going to depend on Saquon Barkley's health, whether they're really competing for the division or just a wild card. And we also know if Daniel Jones can't hold on to the ball again, big year for him, make or break maybe. If he can't step up, then this may not come to fruition. So let's say, for argument's sake, Saquon Barkley is healthy and Daniel Jones holds on to the ball and we'll just match up their games and the rosters versus the other teams. So we start off at Denver at home, opening game, guys. Denver, I think, has been overhyped. Their quarterback situation is a little bit, questionable. It seems they have a good defense. I still think that the Giants should win this game at home against Denver.
I'll tell you guys, in most cases, I don't like open competitions in football. I really don't, because it's as much a team game as there is in sports. And I think it creates a certain friction. But in the case of Denver, their quarterback situation, Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, I favor an open competition because neither guy should have a right to that job. Neither guy. So let them battle it out in camp, and whoever doesn't win it, if there's hard feelings, so be it. You then deal with it. But, with that said, is Denver overrated or not? They're the biggest X factor of all in the NFL. We don't know. Some people have them being a Super Bowl contender, and some people have them picking towards the bottom of the draft. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, the Giants, you mentioned just their running game. If Saquon Barkley doesn't come back 100%, I mean, they're going to have some real problems there. Corey Clement, Devontae Booker, are they really going to get it done? I mean, was Corey Clement going to be let go by the Eagles, of all people, if he really could have an impact? So I'll go with the Giants to get a win there. If they can't win that game, might be a long season.
Like I expressed, when you look at the Giants' schedule and the personnel they have, I think that the Giants are going to be a division contender to win the division. I think they do have enough talent. I think they have enough players. I think Jones is going to get better. He's an intelligent guy, obviously, being a Duke graduate. the things that he's had problems with in the past. I think the staff will help him with that. I have to pick the Giants to win this game.
Okay. So they go to Washington. First big challenge for them for the division because, of course, Washington won it last year. They got a great defensive line. Quarterback situation is a little up in the air, to say the least. Their running game is okay. Their passing game, they have added a couple wide receivers. One's coming back from an injury, which will give them a deep threat. I just think Washington and the Giants are going to split this year. Washington's at home. Maybe they sack Jones a few times. Maybe they get enough to score. Even though the Giants beat Washington twice last year, I think Washington wins this one at home.
You know, the Giants, we talk about all the weapons they got to help Daniel Jones, but it comes down to Nate Soldier, Will Hernandez, Andrew Thomas. You know, guys they've got to protect them. If they don't protect Daniel Jones, what's Daniel Jones going to do? Some quarterbacks, as Jim says, have the quick release, could improvise a little better than the others. Is Daniel Jones that guy? I kind of doubt it. And Washington does have really an elite defense. And they lost twice to the Giants last year. And Jim, being a former player, could tell you when it's within your own division and another team has beaten you twice, it gives you a little more of an attitude. You think about them a little more going ahead. So I think the Washington football team's thinking a little more about that game with the Giants than the Giants are looking ahead. And I think that'll play into their favor and they'll beat the Giants.
I think the X factor in this game is going to be Kyle Rudolph. And the reasons you said is because they do have a talented defense. But having that tight end that can catch it over the middle, he can do the things in the end zone. And I think that's going to help the Giants. And I think Barkley, if he's healthy, is going to be a factor, a big factor, as we all know. And Booker is another talented player that can give him a rest. So he doesn't have to take the load himself, and he has to understand that. I think defensively, the Giants are pretty talented. They're pretty talented defensively, and the players that you mentioned that they picked up are going to help them. I got to go with the Giants still. I think the Giants are going to – I edge them to beat them. It's not going to be a blowout. It'll be a 3-point game, maybe a 7 at the most, but I got to go with the Giants.
So they have Atlanta next at home. Atlanta, again, I mean, I tried to figure them out over the last few years. I haven't been able to. They had a very talented offense, a decent defense, and they just always find a way to lose. I still think that game with the Patriots coming back and beating them and scoring 28 points in the second half affected them. I just don't get it. They have a new coach. They got a great tight end, rookie tight end. But I don't think that's enough to beat the Giants at home.
The Giants have beat Atlanta, and I think Atlanta's going to have an awful year that they're going to be picking in at the top of the draft. And I think they're going to be thinking quarterback. I think this is Matt Ryan. Either his last year as a starter, or he serves as a mentor one more year to who they draft. So I like the Giants in that game, clearly.
The Giants they'll win this game because, like we've been talking about, they have more talent than Atlanta. Atlanta's going through a transition period. Ryan is probably closer to the end than the beginning of his career. I don't think he'll be there to mentor. Somebody will pick him up and try to do the things they've done with some of these quarterbacks now and put them in a different situation. But I think the Giants are more talented.
So right now, the old Dallas Cowboy player, the one that scored on the Giants a couple times, who threatened Phil Simms with an inch of his life, has the Giants in 3-0. Very interesting. So they go down and they play New Orleans. New Orleans, no Drew Brees. They got a great running game. They got a good defense. The quarterback scares the heck out of me. I think New Orleans drops off this year, guys. I think the Giants win one in New Orleans, a very tough place to play.
How come no one talks about no Michael Thomas? You know, the league receiver who they're not going to have. And I think New Orleans' window has closed. The last few years they were supposed to go to the Super Bowl. It gets to a point where team starts fading out. I mean, they're still good. I mean, I think Jim kind of lived that with the Buffalo Bills. When you got to them, they were still a contender, but after going 4 years in a row, you weren't with them the 4 years they went in a row. I mean, you were on the other side, the better side, but they kind of were slipping little by little. They were still good. They could beat most teams, but I think New Orleans is headed in that direction, like a playoff type team, first round loss. I mean, but I think they'll have enough in the tank maybe to beat the Giants. Is that game in New Orleans?
Yes.
If it's in New Orleans, I'm going to go with the Saints because from everything I hear, and Jim could vouch for this, that's an extremely tough place to play at. Very noisy, you know. Maybe only Seattle is the hardest place to play at, but you'd know, Jim. I wouldn't know. I'm just going on based on what I've heard and observed.
I'm agreeing with you, Jack. I think that New Orleans is, and I know from personal experience, it's a hard place to play. And I think New Orleans has enough offensive weapons. You like to have Michael Thomas. There's no question about it. He's one of the elite receivers. But they have other people who can make plays. And I think that they're really where they're really good at is defensively.
Yeah.
They're really good defensively. And I think the Giants, although very talented, they're going to struggle in New Orleans. And then we're going to have some question marks about, you know, how far they're going to go. But I think that New Orleans is going to win the game.
And you know, not to leave out, maybe one of the best, the top three coaches in the league too. I mean,
you got Sean Payton.
Oh my God, he's tremendous.
Yes, he is. I agree. I worked with Sean in Dallas, and I agree with that 100%.
He goes. The Giants then go play. The only team that beat the Giants that this team won in the expansion year when Tom Landry first took over the Dallas Cowboys was the Giants. So they're going to go play the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. I think this is a preview to the next game and the division itself. I think in Dallas, the Giants get beat.
You know, one thing I can't, before prediction, that I don't like with athletes, like I hit with Ezekiel Elliott. Oh, he was getting his weight down. I mean, just get yourself in shape. Look, I was a former athlete, not really a good one, but I was a former athlete. So I understand, you know, certain coaches telling as a guideline one of the players to get their weight down. But I've seen it happen in boxing. Don't go for a target weight, a specific weight that you're pulling out of a hat. That Ezekiel Elliott's going to be nice and slim, look at himself in the mirror, but he's not. Just work out hard, get in great shape, and don't eat recklessly, and you'll be fine. But so all this weight stuff up, I'm going to like the Cowboys to beat the Giants in Dallas. They have a little bit of a score to settle too with the Giants. They split the two games last year. Let's go with the Cowboys in that game.
Well, Jack, everything you said I did to keep my weight down. I felt good, too. I felt like I was going for the heavyweight championship. So I'm sorry about that, Jack. But
you didn't need a target weight. You get your weight down, but you didn't need a number to get to. That's my
Jack. Leave Zeke alone before I bring him on the
Zeke
show.
alone. But here's the thing. Let's get back to predictions. I think that there'll be a one-game difference. Obviously, the Giants or Cowboys are going to be up one game, and at this point in the season, and this is going to be a crucial game because this is a game that could decide later on playoff seedings. And I think it's going to be a rambunctious crowd at AT&T Stadium, and I think, like you said, Zeke, although you don't believe it, that weight's helping them. You got Dak back. You got an explosive offense. Watching some of their preseason, it looks like they're getting more coordinated on defense. But this is a big game for the Cowboys, the direction. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are going to win this game, and I think this is going to point them in the right direction. This will help them get in the right direction. And I don't think the Giants, the way we're talking, have lost 2 games in a row. If they lose to New Orleans and Dallas, they're going to have to come back strong, whoever the next game is.
Very true, and that leads me right into the next one. The Rams are now the favorites to win the West, believe it or not, to some experts. To me, believe it or not, guys, this is the biggest game of the season for the Giants because they will be around 500. They're going against a legitimate playoff contender. They're playing at home against the Rams. Rams have a good defense. They now have Matt Stafford. This is a game I think will tell the story, believe it or not the division games. I think this game right here, you just got past the first quarter of your season as they break it down. This is a huge game for the Giants, and I think they win this one.
You know, the Rams lost Mick Akers for the year. I mean, that's going to affect their running attack for sure. The Rams might be the best balanced team. I mean, I'm not saying they have great players in every position, but they have very good players in every position. They have a great player, obviously, in Donald, you know, maybe the best defensive player in the game. But so I got to go with the Rams in that spot. And it's going to be an interesting year with Matthew Stafford because after spending his career with the Lions, we always thought of him as being an elite quarterback, but he's never proven to be an elite quarterback. But as they say, no excuses. This is it. Either he's the missing piece for the Rams or not. And I think they'll be contending for the Super Bowl. And don't forget, they did make the playoffs last year, and they knocked off Seattle in the playoffs. So it's not like they're coming from a long way back into Super Bowl contention.
Yeah. The question I would ask is, who are you afraid on offense for the Rams? What receiver are you afraid of?
Woods and Kupp are excellent.
He's an excellent possession receiver. He's not a speed guy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's why I think the Giants are going to win. I think they can control them. And then I've always said this, is coming across the country is tough for those West Coast teams.
Jim, I got an answer for you. I didn't answer completely. Deshaun Jackson is a member of the Rams now. He's been injury prone, but if he's healthy, there's your speed burner. There's your deep threat.
Exactly. But at this point in his career, are you afraid of him? I'm not afraid of him. I would say the Giants have the advantage because, like I said, they got, unless the Rams travel early, and even that doesn't help all the time. Coming across the country is tough. You coming through it depends on what time zone you play. If you play at 12, that's 10 o'clock. Really, it's not 10 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock on the West Coast.
Jim, how does that work? How does that work? I always wondered how it worked. I wouldn't have a clue how to advise a team when to come in. You don't want to come in too early, and you don't want to come in late. Going across the country, what day do you arrive? When do you practice? Sleeping habits?
Exactly. A lot of teams that are on the West Coast teams come in on Friday, and they practice obviously on the Fridays, and then go into the game. Give their bodies a little time to adjust to the time difference. But and that's how for teams that are in the central part, it doesn't hurt them going to the West Coast. It doesn't hurt them going to the East Coast as much because it's only a 1 to 2 hour difference. But the teams that are coming all the way from the West Coast, it's a little bit more difficult because your body gets used to certain patterns. And I think that's going to help the Giants. They're going to be a little bit, and Matthew Stafford is a good player, but to me, he's not a great player. He's a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. Can he take him over the hump? I don't think he can. I think he'll put up some good numbers, but I don't think he's had that opportunity to do that with Detroit for many years and hasn't accomplished it. And you say, well, it's Detroit, and he's now with LA, but he had some talented players in Detroit too, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, listen, the only thing I worry about the Rams is their defense. I think they got one of the best defenses in the league. And if Saquon Barkley is healthy and they can play action pass off these guys, keep everybody home, they might have some success. So they go to Carolina. No, Carolina comes to them. We have the Jack's old quarterback coming up to play the Giants. I just think the Giants are better than Carolina right now. I think Carolina has a good, solid young team. I think they're going to be better, but I don't think they can beat the Giants right now. That's all.
If Carolina beats the Giants, you could forget about them winning the division. I mean, these are the type of games, you have to win. I mean, even if the Giants are having a good year up to that point and they slip up in that one game, these games, like Jim could tell you, they come back to haunt you later on. Even though it might happen in mid-season and it's just a little blip, you better get the win out of the way and you better get your cushion, early when you can. I just can't. Sam Darnold, I wish him a lot of success, and they got him a few weapons that the Jets didn't get him. But unless we're wrong about him, unless I'm wrong about him, I just don't see Carolina, winning. I was going to say winning half your games with a 17-game schedule. That's going to be hard now. But I don't see Carolina, being a 500 type team this year. I see it being a bit of a long year for them. Giants should win.
What do you think, Jim?
I would have to agree with Jack too, but you still got McCaffrey, and you still have some firepower on Carolina. They're not just a team.
For sure.
And I think they're going to be competitive. They're going to win some games that we didn't expect, but it won't be against the New York Giants. But Carolina is going to be a decent team. They're not going to be a great team. I don't know if they'll be a 500 team, but they're going to give some teams some scares. And the way the NFC South is right now, don't be surprised if Carolina's in the mix, because you got New Orleans that has some issues, you got Atlanta that has some issues, and you got Tampa Bay that is the big dog right now. But other than that, I mean, who would you don't know. You don't know with New Orleans with the quarterback situation. In Atlanta, obviously, we know all the issues they have. The only solid team is Tampa Bay. So I think Carolina's going to be competitive. But like you said, Jack, I don't see them being a great team. And I think the Giants will win this game.
Well, we're going to be right back after these messages, folks. But I'll give you a reason, because with the next game coming up, they might be looking past Carolina. And a lot of teams lose because they're not concentrating on that game. So right after these messages, I'll let you know who the Giants are playing after Carolina and what the guys think about that. We'll be right back real quick, folks.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack Hirsch and Jim Jeffcoat. So, guys, the next game the Giants have is against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, They're playing at Kansas City. They got to travel out there. I know they're going to be looking forward to this game when they're playing Carolina. And there's no doubt about it. They're human beings. They're going to want to see how good they match up against one of the best teams in football. That's the only worry I got about the Giants playing Carolina. So they go to Kansas City, and they face a very good team, one of the best in the league. I think they lose here. Jack, what do you think?
You know, after Kansas City won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, I thought they'd go on a run. I thought they would be the type of team that could win 3 Super Bowls, would win a couple of more. I thought they would repeat last year. Then they'd maybe be the first Super Bowl team to three-peat. That was my thought. But, you know, they redid their offensive line that gave Mahomes so much trouble in the Super Bowl. He, you know, was constantly under pressure. You know, Tampa Bay obviously has a great defense. But they still have a lot of big players. And a team that loses the Super Bowl, I mean, Jim has never been on a Super Bowl losing team. You come back more with a vengeance, or is your feeling of invincibility punctured? That's the type of thing. What's going to be the attitude of the Chiefs? Are they going to have the swagger coming back into training camp? Well, we're still AFC champs 2 years in a row, and there's going to be hell to pay for the opponents. Was the confidence just a little shattered? Was the mojo just a little bit thrown off? But with that said, to me, they have an all-time great quarterback, even though he hasn't been around long enough, in Patrick Mahomes. So I think when you have that type of leadership at quarterback and you have an all-time great there, he doesn't allow the guys to feel too sorry for themselves at any point. So, you know, obviously I just have to go with the Chiefs in that game, just on talent alone, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
You know, when you say that, Jack, and I just thought about this while you were talking, it was Dan Marino, as we know, is one of the all-time great quarterbacks. And the only time he went to the Super Bowl was his first year in the league. And hopefully that doesn't happen to Mahomes, because we see a talent and we saw him do things. And over the years, Marino also had great players on offense, and they had very good defenses. But they never reached that point again. And like I said, I hope that doesn't happen to Mahomes. But there's some issues with that team. Defensively, they weren't the most stout defense in the league. Offensively, like you said, they changed their whole offensive line, which, as we know, when you play in the offensive line, is about continuity. How fast do these guys mesh? How fast do they get used to them? Because you like to know what the player, especially offensive lineman, is what he's going to do next to you and how he's going to perform. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to think the Giants are going to upset them in Kansas City. I'm going to call it.
All right. Wow. I got to save this tape for when they do play Kansas City, Jim.
I would think you get a guy like Orlando Brown. Guys like that mesh pretty quick, you know, veteran presence, impact offensive linemen. I would think they could adjust to any situation and mesh with anyone.
But offensive linemen are a little different, Jack. You see, perfect example, when the Cowboys had all those injuries on offensive line, you see how hard, difficult it was players to come in, because offensive linemen are a little different. They have to play together. And that's why you see a lot of offensive linemen that make great coaches, because they're used to that, playing together.
Yeah, I agree. So the Raiders come and play the Giants. You know how I feel about the head coach. I think the Giants are a lot more talented than the Raiders. I think they win this game.
Yeah, I can't get a read on the Raiders. I just can't get a read on them. I'm going to go with the Giants. I can't say anything about the Raiders, but John Gruden is so unpredictable. You know, who knows what moves he's going to make between now and then. If anyone's going to make some really bold moves, and I have no idea where. You look at the quarterback situation first. John Gruden loves quarterbacks. You know, if it was up to him, he would have a dozen of them on the roster. But is Derek Carr still going to be a starting quarterback by then? when Derek Carr's talking in the offseason about maybe retiring if the Raiders trade him, just the idea that he thinks he might be going isn't the healthiest situation. I mean, I have to go with the Giants on stability alone.
Like I've said previously, I think the Raiders are a lot more talented than people are giving them credit for. But like you said, that Gruden is so unpredictable, you never know what he's going to do. They should be better defensively this year. But with that said, I would go with the same reason. I think I'm going to go with the Giants. The Giants are looking pretty good right now.
So they go and they play at Tampa Bay. Tom Brady has had his issues with the Giants. I don't know if there's a block there now or not. I doubt it. He's too much of a veteran. Tampa Bay, to me, just has a better team right now than the Giants. So I got to go with Tampa Bay.
Issues with the Giants. He's had issues with the name the Giants. These guys he's playing against, they're not the guys who beat him in the past. So I kind of sometimes chuckle when I hear, well, this player has trouble with this team. He has trouble with the logo. He doesn't have trouble with the actual opposing players. He never played against them. I don't want to hear the history against them and they come up with a number there. I mean, Tampa Bay seems to be loaded. I mean, Tom Brady he might not be the best quarterback in football, but I'll tell you, he might be the best GM, okay? Keeping that, the way they kept that team together, especially with the cap in existence, you got to go with them there. It's so hard to pick against Tampa Bay anyone they play. The teams that are going to beat Tampa Bay this year, they're going to lose a couple of times or so, maybe even a few times. It's going to be games that they're not up for, just games in the middle of the season. That's just and against an average opponent, because everyone's going to be gunning for Tampa Bay. Everyone is going to be psyched to play that team, and they're not going to be psyched to play everyone else. But they should have a little too much firepower for the Giants. But the Giants have a heck of a defense. I mean, we've been talking about the Giants on the offensive side of the ball. But the one thing the Giants have, I mean, they're close to having an elite defense. People really don't give them enough credit for that. Their defense is about on a par with the Washington football team, who people credit with having such a good defense. So I think that the Giant defense is going to keep them in any game. But when all's said and done, Tom Brady and company should pull away at the end.
Tom did have a lot of success, but Tom is getting very close to Social Security and Medicare. I don't foresee him making it through the whole season. That's just my opinion. Wow. I don't foresee him. I mean, they hit injuries last year with his knee. I think that the Giants are in a perfect position to upset him here. I picked them over Kansas City. I'm going to pick the Giants to beat Tampa Bay.
Wow. Two underdog picks. I love it.
I just think.
So that's bold. You're the only. Jim's the only one maybe out there who's going to pick them over both Super Bowl teams next year and back-to-back games. Wow, that's a bold prediction.
That's what you said. They're getting close to the elite. They're getting close to the elite defense. Offensively, they have some talent, and I think Jones is going to make a step in the right direction. And that's, I'm a Cowboy through and through, but that's what gets me afraid is the talent on the Giants. On the defensive side, they're more talented defensively than the Cowboys are at this point.
Wow. So the Eagles come and play the Giants. Again, we've spoke about the Eagles before. I just don't think the Eagles will be ready to play against the better teams in their division. They might come up and beat one of those teams once in a while. And I love the Eagles' history. They're a lunch bucket organization. They play tough all the time, but there's a new coach. There's a new quarterback. There's a new wide receiver. They're new. But not this year. I think the Giants take care of the Eagles pretty easily at home.
Let me just correct something. I got a little carried away last week when I said Jalen Hurts, is going to be nearly as good as Russell Wilson. I got a little carried away. What I was trying to say, Jalen Hurts is going to be a quality NFL quarterback. I got a little carried away because Russell Wilson is a future Hall of Famer. He's elite. Okay, so I got a little carried away there, so let me backtrack. Listen, who's going to be a better quarterback next year, Daniel Jones or Jalen Hurts? I mean, that's a better debate to get into by the time the year's over. Philadelphia, I'm not sure they're rebuilding, not rebuilding. It's a game the Giants are going to be up for. The Giant organization obviously has hard feelings towards the Eagle organization. Some of the players on the team who watched the game against Washington that kept them out of the playoffs. So I think the Giants would want to stick it to the Eagles and should win the game.
I feel that the Giants are going to win it, running away with it, not because of the reasons that you said, Jack. I just think the Giants are going to be in a position to have a chance to show that they want to be division champions. And I think they're going to not sleepwalk through a game like this. Jalen Hurts is going to be a good player, but it's not going to be this year. I don't know if he'll be, it's hard to say who's going to be in the Hall of Famer and who's not, but I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a talented player as they build that roster and help bring people around them to help them. But I just think the Giants right now are the most talented, are probably, if not, the most talented team in the NFC East. They're close to it.
So they go to Miami. I don't believe in Tua. I think Tua is a great college quarterback. There are a lot of great college quarterbacks. I don't think he's going to be a game changer at Miami. I think Miami's got a great defense. I think they got great special teams. I think they got a great coaching staff. But I think they kind of take a step back next year under Tua without having Fitzpatrick there. I think the Giants win in Miami.
Don't people trust Nick Saban that he knows what he's doing? If he's going to sit down Jalen Hurts, an established quarterback at Alabama who won him a national championship, and he's going to replace him with Tua, shouldn't that tell us something about the talent level? I mean, I trust that Nick Saban knows a heck of a lot more about them than all of us. He saw them at practice each day. He knows their upside. He knows their potential. What did Tua do wrong last year? I mean, he didn't light it up the way Justin Herbert did. He wasn't quite as dynamic as Burrow was. But, he's a young quarterback. He's easing his way in, and they certainly drafted to help him this year. So, and Miami's an improving team. I'll go with Miami to win that game. I have a lot of faith in Brian Flores. He might be the best young coach in the NFL.
I'm falling off my chair. I got some serious issues because I agree with everything that Jack said. I gotta get scared. He is right. I think Tua is a talented quarterback. I think that some guys have a different learning curve. I think Tua will be better this year. And I think Miami will beat the New York Giants in Miami. And I have to,
There's a couple pauses for the causes I have on Tua. First, coming out and saying he didn't know the playbook tells me that the man is not committed. I don't care how good a quarterback you are. If you're not going to know that playbook when you're ready to play the game, I got cause for issues. And second, guys, I think that injury affected him more than we think. Tua was a great college quarterback. We've had great college quarterbacks. I think that injury has affected him. And until I'm going to say that until he proves me wrong. Because if it wasn't for Fitzpatrick, Tua wouldn't have won some of the games he won as a starting quarterback. And that's just my opinion. We'll see how that works out. I wish him all the luck, honestly. They go to the Chargers, and I think the Chargers are a up-and-coming team. They're at home, and I think the Giants get edged out by the Chargers there.
I don't look at the team's final record per se. The Chargers were 7-9 last year. I look how they finished up the season. That's a better indication. Jim could tell you about 7-9 records. After the first year under Jimmy Johnson, you were 1-15. You were 7-9 the second year, but you closed very strongly, and that led you into the following year. And I think that's the case with the Chargers. 7-9 last year. They're going to have a winning record this year. Are they playing in New York? Or are they playing in LA?
At San Diego.
Well, they're not playing at San Diego unless they move back.
I know that. I'm going to say that.
If they play, Wow. I'm going to give a little lean. Wow. I'm going to go with the Giants to upset them. Wow. Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Blake Martinez. You know, those guys maybe will show the leadership on the road, and they'll come up with the type of game they came up with at Seattle last year when no one, what an effort they came up with beating the Seahawks this year. I think they're going to come up with the effort that's, you know, close to that, and they're going to upset the Chargers.
New coaching staff, new system, offensively and defensively. There's going to be an adjustment period. 7-9 wasn't them last year. That was Lynn. This is a different team. I'm going to go with the New York Giants. Wow. I think the Giants have an opportunity to show what they're made of. I like some of the things that Herbert did last year, but he's got a whole different system now. I like what they did defensively, but they're learning a new system. I'm going to go with the New York Giants because they'll be more established.
Listen, you want to make Anthony Lynn out to be
Jack, wait a minute. 5 minutes, dude. We got 5 minutes left to cover 4 games. I know you love to talk, but we got to get
make it quick.
Okay, so we got Dallas at home. Dallas beats the Giants at home. I think the Giants return the favor and beat Dallas at home.
I agree. They'll split.
How about you, Jim?
I have no argument with that. I have no argument with it. They'll probably split.
Then they go to Philly. I still think the Giants are better. This is where they kick it in. They either win or lose the division. This proves whether a playoff game, the last 3 games. You got Philly. They go to Philly. I think they win that.
Philly's got to beat someone, but I get the feeling it might be a little bit of a long year for Philly. So at that point in the season, the Giants is going to have a lot more to play for, and so I'll have to go with them to win.
I think the Giants will win. I think the Giants, but it's going to be a tough game because it's in Philly, correct? It's always tough.
Yes. Yes. I think it's now I can't read my own writing. I think they're playing. It's Chicago and Chicago. Chicago, a good team, but I don't think that they have the talent the Giants have either. I think they beat Chicago in Chicago.
Well, you know, it's easy to forget the Bears made the playoffs last year. They were only 8-8. I guess the big storyline is Justin Fields going to be the starter by then? Is Andy Dalton going to be in for the year? Chicago really has a good defense, and they had a bit of an off year last year. And I'll go with Chicago, you know, to win in Chicago.
Chicago is not going to beat it. They're going to be in a transition period. They're under a lot of pressure to win, but I just think that the Giants are going to beat them in Chicago. I think Giants are better offensively than Chicago. So I think the Giants' offense is going to have a great day against Khalil Mack and the rest of the group.
So we come down to the last game, guys. Washington should still be in the playoff mix, at least as a wild card. You got Dallas with their last game, whoever they're playing. I don't have it in front of me. Huge game. This might be for the division. Washington has a shot at least to knock the Giants out of contention for the division. Big game. I think it's going to be a tough game, but I think the Giants should win this at home if they want to win the division.
I agree with you, Mac. Something about the Washington football team, and I'm making it quick. They're just I think because of their defense last year, the way they closed the year, we might be overrating them a little bit. So I'm going to go with the Giants there.
Well, what I think is going to happen is that a long season, the Washington Redskins season and their record is going to be predicated on health. And I think because they're playing a first place schedule, there's going to be some guys banged up. And will they be back by that game? We don't know. And that's the thing. So I'm picking the New York Football Giants to win that game.
Oof. So off the top of my head, guys, just like the Dallas Cowboys, who I think we had at 11-6 from what you guys picked and the average, and Jim surprised me with a lot of his picks, picking more wins than I did. Jack was a little bit lower than me, but it averages out to about 12-5 12-5. And if the Dallas Cowboys go
You're
11
not
and
going
6,
to go 12-5 when all's said and done. That's a little bold. I don't think the Giants are quite
that's
that
a very,
good.
very,
More like
very
10-7
high.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Hey,
Very high.
go bold and go home, Jack.
I don't think they're 12-5 team off the top of my head. I just think, no, not quite. It's conceivable they can, but yeah.
Oh, anything's conceivable. So that's what the top 3 teams were last year. This is what we have them as, folks. Of course, that means we're giving everybody they could possibly or probably beat. There's no gimmies in football. We all know that. But when you're predicting something, you're going to go off rosters, what happened, and how you feel the roster is compared to the schedule. And right now, with the Dallas easy schedule, the Giants easy schedule, and Washington with just a little bit tougher schedule and a little bit of a controversy at quarterback, that's where we have them, folks, so far. Next week is the Eagles. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy your Sunday, folks. Great job again, Jim. Jack, back Wednesday, all over again. And we got a couple surprise guests. I'll get out there in promotions. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks.
Max
Have a great
Kellerman
weekend.
might want to come back. He had such a good time on the show